My name is Lila Dawson, I'm 34 years old, and I built my financial advisory business entirely from scratch. That achievement, however, came only after a deeply painful family incident in Indianapolis over a decade ago that altered my entire path. It all began during what was supposed to be a simple family dinner. My sister's husband, Quentin, suddenly turned on me, leveling a cruel accusation that I had stolen from our family's shared savings. Rather than defending me, my sister Claire, who had once been my closest ally, slapped me across the face with such force that I was left stunned. She demanded that I leave immediately. My mother, Eleanor, shockingly took Claire's side, pushing me toward the front door like I was no longer her daughter, but an unwelcome intruder. The betrayal left me frozen in disbelief. My surroundings blurred, and words stuck in my throat. I didn't resist. I grabbed my jacket, left the warmth of my childhood home, and stepped silently into the night rain. Silence became my only answer to their rejection. But I wasn't about to crumble. Exactly 1 week later, I made a choice that would shake their lives apart in a matter of minutes. My phone lit up with 36 missed calls, and soon after Claire appeared at my front door. Before diving deeper into that turning point, I often like to ask my listeners, what time is it where you are, and from where are you tuning in? Knowing how far my story travels still amazes me. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future updates. Claire and I had once been inseparable. Growing up in Indianapolis, she was my senior and my partner in everything. In our modest neighborhood, we spent summers shooting hoops at the local park and winters sledding down the snowy slopes by Eagle Creek Reservoir. Our bond felt unbreakable, especially as our parents' marriage deteriorated. By the time I was 10, I could already hear their late-night shouting matches about money. At 14, Dad packed up and moved into a small apartment across town. The collapse hit Mom hard. She struggled to hold herself together and barely managed her demanding shifts at the hospital. When I turned 18, Claire became my anchor. She made sure I got to school every morning in her old rattling Ford, prepared meals when Mom was too exhausted, and even helped me tackle math homework despite her heavy college load. At night, we'd sit together on the porch, gazing at the vast Indiana sky and dreaming aloud. I wanted to build a financial firm that would help families like ours escape debt's stranglehold. Claire's dream was simpler, staying close, maybe even starting a venture with me one day. She'd tease me, saying, "Claire and Heidi's empire," while gesturing dramatically like we were already queens of business. Claire was my fiercest protector. When classmates mocked my second-hand clothes in middle school, she stormed into the principal's office, demanding the bullying stop. It worked, and afterward she taught me to walk with my head high. She even turned down a scholarship to Purdue so she could stay near home, enrolling at IUPUI while balancing shifts at a downtown cafe. Meanwhile, I buried myself in books and eventually earned a full ride to Indiana University. The day I received my acceptance letter, Claire was the first person I told. Her hug radiated pride, though I could sense the worry beneath her smile. "This is your shot," she whispered. "Make it count for both of us." During my sophomore year at IU, Claire met Marcus Heller in one of her business classes. He had a slick charisma and liked to brag about his supposed real estate ventures. Claire fell quickly. Dates turned into weekend trips, and soon Quentin was a fixture at our family dinners. At first, he seemed charming. He laughed at Claire's jokes and played the role of the attentive boyfriend. But I noticed subtle shifts. He began questioning my closeness with Claire, saying things like, "You two are like twins, but she's building her own life now." Before long, Claire started canceling our sister nights, claiming Quentin had already made plans. He slowly inserted himself into conversations about money, making sly comments about how I was a burden. He insinuated that my education, even though fully covered by scholarships, was draining our family's finances. Then he began spreading lies that I was quietly dipping into Mom's savings. Claire, once my defender, initially brushed it off, but Quentin's steady drip of poison wore her down. "You're too soft on her," he'd tell her. "She leans on you too much." When I confronted Claire, she waved me off. "He's just protective," she said. "You wouldn't understand. You're still in school." Once they got engaged, the divide between us grew wider. Quentin insisted on an extravagant engagement ring Claire couldn't afford, and he increasingly steered her away from me. Our porch talks vanished, replaced by his grand, empty visions. He openly mocked my career goals. "That's cute," he'd sneer. "But success isn't about books. It's about who you know. Even worse, Claire began parroting his words, her once warm encouragement replaced with a chilly skepticism whenever I shared my accomplishments. Slowly but surely, Quentin reshaped our sisterhood into a wedge. By the time of that fateful family dinner, the bond that had once held us together was already badly fractured. Returning to Indianapolis after college graduation, I was excited to share my plans to open a financial consulting firm in Seattle. Mom's signature pot roast and mashed potatoes filled the dining room, promising comfort. But Quentin dominated the evening, bragging endlessly about his latest property deals. Claire, proudly showing off her engagement ring, nodded along like his shadow. When dessert arrived, Quentin turned to me with a smirk. "So, Heidi's off to Seattle for some finance fantasy? Bold move," he said. I forced a polite smile, but inside I braced for conflict. "Yes, I've got promising leads. Seattle's a great place for consultants helping small businesses tackle debt." Claire quickly jumped in, echoing his doubts. "Sounds risky. Quentin's thriving in real estate here. Why not stay local?" Then Quentin launched his attack. Looking straight at my mother, he declared, "Eleanor, I checked some old accounts. The inheritance your ex-husband left for the girls. Some of it's missing." His gaze zeroed in on me. "And Heidi's always been the numbers wizard." I froze. "What are you suggesting?" I asked. Claire's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "He's saying you took it, Heidi. You've been spending a lot at school." Stunned, I shot back. "That's absurd. My scholarships covered everything." Quentin leaned forward, voice sharp. "We all know you've held resentment since the divorce. Maybe you thought you were entitled." Mom squirmed in her seat, but she didn't say a word. Claire suddenly stood, her chair screeching loudly across the floor. Her voice shook with fury. "You're lying. Quentin's right, you've always been shady with money." Before I could even respond, her hand whipped across my face, leaving a burning sting on my cheek. "Get out," she screamed, pointing directly at the door. I turned to Mom for support, but instead she stood trembling, her face tight. She placed her hands on my shoulders and shoved me toward the exit. "You're stirring up trouble, Heidi. Just leave." The front door slammed behind me, and I found myself outside in the dark, the cold rain pouring down. My cheek burned, my chest tightened, and my heart pounded as the realization sank in. My family had just exiled me. Within days, I booked a one-way flight to Seattle, severing all contact. Distance became my shield. In Seattle, I rented a small downtown apartment and threw myself into work, piecing together the foundation of what would eventually become my firm. I started small, taking freelance consulting jobs for startups, often conducting meetings in bustling coffee shops or during networking events. The city's constant drizzle matched my grief, yet it slowly washed away some of the pain. My very first client was a struggling tech startup drowning in debt. I developed a detailed plan that pulled them back from collapse. Word spread quickly, and before long I was gaining steady referrals. Soon I hired my first assistant. Around that time, I met Naomi West at a women's business networking event. Over coffee, she studied me for a moment and then said, "You're carrying something heavy." Hesitant, I shared the story of that dinner, the accusations, the slap, and the exile. Shannon listened without judgment, then leaned in and told me, "Turn that pain into fuel for your work. Don't let them decide who you become." Her words lit a spark that fueled countless late nights of spreadsheets, pitches, and endless perseverance. My firm carved out a specialty, protecting families and businesses from financial traps like the ones that had destroyed mine. Yet the scar on my cheek, though invisible, remained. It was the physical memory of Claire's betrayal, reminding me how fragile trust can be. Over the next decade in Seattle, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. My firm's first office was a tiny, cramped space near Pike Place Market, but I poured my energy into it. Late nights stretched into mornings as I crunched numbers and cold-called investors. Then came my first breakthrough, helping a popular local restaurant chain avoid bankruptcy through a tailored debt restructuring plan. That success attracted new clients, and my team grew from 10 to 20 employees. We moved into a sleek downtown office, and by year 5, I had purchased a modern condo overlooking Puget Sound. Its floor-to-ceiling windows framed the water that became my quiet companion during sleepless nights. Despite my new life, I still reached out. I mailed birthday presents for Claire's children, Julia and Owen. Every package came back unopened. Claire's silence pierced deeper than any slap. Mom would call occasionally, tiptoeing around the subject of that night, but I kept my replies brief. "I'm fine, Mom," I'd say, sidestepping any attempt to revisit the past. 6 years into my new life, Mom texted with news. Our grandfather had passed away. Against my instincts, I flew back to Indianapolis for the funeral, hoping it might mend what was broken. At the cemetery, I spotted Claire standing beside Quentin with their children. Julia, then about 4, peeked curiously at me, but Claire pulled her away without a word. Quentin avoided my eyes entirely. After the service, I approached Mom quietly. "Can we talk about that night?" I asked. She shook her head, tears in her eyes. "Not now, Heidi. It's too much." Claire ignored me as they left. Standing alone by the grave, I realized reconciliation was a fantasy. Back in Seattle, Shannon continued to keep me grounded. Over coffee she'd say, "They are not your mistakes, Heidi. Build your own future, not their past." Her own struggles gave her words weight. Therapy also became part of my healing. Dr. Monica Alvarez guided me through the wounds of betrayal. "It's not about forgiving them yet," she told me during one session. "It's about not letting their choices break you." By year 10, my firm had grown into a national operation with clients in multiple states and a staff of 50. I traveled to conferences, speaking to packed auditoriums about strategies to prevent financial ruin. My story began appearing in business journals, each feature reminding me I was worth more than their accusations. Even with all of this, loneliness crept in at night. I dated briefly, most notably Derek, a tech founder, but I couldn't let my guard down. Shannon noticed. Over wine one evening she said, "You can let go, you know. They don't own you anymore." Slowly, therapy helped me loosen my grip on the pain. And then came the day I knew would eventually arrive. 10 years after walking away, an unknown number flashed across my phone, buzzing incessantly. 36 missed calls in minutes. I was in my Seattle office, overlooking Elliott Bay, preparing for a major client meeting. I finally answered and froze. It was Claire. Her voice trembled. "Heidi, we need to talk. It's an emergency." My stomach twisted. I agreed to meet that evening at my condo. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Claire, Quentin, and their 2 children waiting beside a packed SUV. Suitcases spilled out, their belongings crammed in. Claire looked worn, her hair messy, her eyes swollen from crying. Quentin, stripped of his usual charm, looked defeated. Julia, now 10, clutched a worn stuffed bear. 8-year-old Owen kicked at gravel, his face confused and anxious. These children were strangers to me, casualties of the wall their parents had built. I parked and approached cautiously. "Why are you here?" My voice was firm but steady. Quentin spoke first, forcing a casual tone. "We've hit hard times. Real estate collapsed and I lost my job in a merger." Claire stepped forward, voice cracking. "The bank took our house last month. We were homeless." Little Julia chimed in innocently. "We stayed in a motel with a pool, but Dad said no swimming." Owen added, frowning, "The Wi-Fi was awful." Their innocence cut deeper than their parents' excuses. Claire's eyes filled with desperation as she took another step closer. Claire's voice wavered as she looked at me. "Family should stick together. You've got the space, right?" Quentin quickly added, trying to sound casual. "Just temporary. A few months until I land another job. The schools here are great for the kids." Then Julia, eyes wide, asked softly, "Aunt Heidi, do you have a room for us?" The innocent question hit me harder than any accusation. Memories of Quentin's manipulations and Claire's slap from that night in Indianapolis surged back, mingling with the sting of 10 years of silence. I studied Claire's face. Exhaustion etched every line, and her voice cracked when she whispered, "We were wrong that night." Quentin was stressed. I overreacted. "Mom feels awful. She's still in Indianapolis, but she begged me to reach out to you." But the 36 missed calls felt less like regret and more like desperation. Quentin finally admitted, "We're broke, Heidi. No savings. Bankruptcy. We've got nothing." Against my better judgment, I let them inside. The kids gasped at the view of Puget Sound from my condo windows. Claire wandered the room, her eyes lingering on my framed awards and articles. "This place is incredible," she murmured. Quentin nodded, adding, "I saw your firm featured in a business magazine. Figured you'd understand hard times." I sat them down, my heart racing as the past roared back. "That dinner wasn't just a mistake," I said firmly. You accused me of stealing. Claire, you slapped me. Mom shoved me out like I was nothing. You cut me off completely. Tears streamed down Claire's face. I thought I was protecting my family. Quentin convinced me. You don't know how persuasive he can be. I snapped. I stared at her. He manipulated you, yes, but you chose to believe him. And now you're here only because you've lost everything. Quentin bristled, voice sharp. We're asking for help, not judgment. The kids flinched. Owen shrank behind Claire, his small face full of fear. I exhaled heavily. Part of me longed to slam the door, to shield myself from reopening wounds. But when I looked at Julia and Owen, my resolve softened. They were innocent. What exactly do you want? I asked at last. That night I drew a hard line. I arranged limited support, strictly temporary. By the next morning, my assistant had secured a furnished 3-bedroom apartment in a safe Seattle neighborhood with good schools. The rent was $2,000 per month, covered for 6 months only. I also sent Quentin job leads in real estate and finance. In a text to Claire, I made my conditions clear. This is temporary. No contact unless it's urgent. No drama. If you cross these lines, it ends. Claire replied quickly, Thank you, Heidi. The kids are thrilled. Quentin is reaching out to your leads. I didn't answer. I buried myself in client meetings and prepared for an upcoming debt seminar. Shannon cautioned me over lunch, her tone serious. You're generous, but be careful. They've hurt you before. I reassured her that I'd set boundaries. No staying at my condo, no family dinners, just essentials for the children's stability. Weeks passed quietly. My assistant confirmed the lease payments were processed. Claire even sent a photo of Julia and Owen smiling in their new rooms. For a moment, I felt hope that maybe the kids could have a chance at stability, even if my relationship with their parents was irreparable. But soon, whispers reached me. A Seattle colleague who knew people in Indianapolis mentioned hearing Quentin spin a familiar story, that I had manipulated family accounts years ago, pushing them out to control Eleanor's funds. The old lie had returned. Another contact confirmed it. Quentin had repeated this tale during a job interview, painting himself as the victim of my supposed greed. Whether Claire believed it or simply ignored it, I couldn't say. Furious, I confronted them on a video call. Why are you spreading lies again? Quentin shrugged, dodging. I was just venting. People asked questions. Claire chimed in. He was stressed, Heidi. We're grateful for the apartment. Their evasions were proof enough. Julia waved in the background, but I ended the call, hands trembling. That night, I blocked their numbers. I instructed my attorney to terminate the lease support after the current month. No extensions. I alerted my network to Quentin's fabrications, and one firm withdrew his candidacy after spotting contradictions. Claire soon emailed from a new account, pleading, The kids need this. Don't punish them. Mom called too, her voice heavy. They're struggling, Heidi. Please help a bit longer. But my answer was final. No. They crossed the line again. Cutting them off was painful, but it lifted a weight from me. I upgraded my condo security and changed my locks. No more gifts for Julia and Owen. No more waiting for apologies that would never come. A cousin later told me Claire and Quentin moved into a rundown motel, living under flickering neon signs and paper-thin walls. Quentin's job prospects evaporated once word of his deceit spread. One firm even blacklisted him. Claire lost her cafe job after customers complained about her bitter attitude. Their credit destroyed, they filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in King County, selling off their SUV and the few assets they had left. Former friends from Indianapolis distanced themselves, fed up with their endless drama. Even neighbors in Seattle gossiped about the bitter, broke family. On social media, Claire's pleas drew sharp comments, exposing Quentin's lies. Julia and Owen struggled in school, whispered about by classmates who wondered why they had suddenly moved. Claire left angry voicemails blaming me, but I never responded. Their marriage splintered under the pressure. Quentin's late nights triggered arguments loud enough for motel neighbors to overhear. Divorce loomed. Eventually, Claire returned to Indianapolis with the kids, moving back in with Mom. Quentin stayed in Seattle, scraping by with odd jobs, his former swagger long gone. When Mom called, her voice carried blame. You've ruined them, Heidi. But I stood firm. They ruined themselves. Over dinner, Shannon raised her glass. You've protected your peace. They'll never change. You did what you had to. And she was right. My firm continued to thrive, landing national contracts and keynote speaking opportunities. My story of setting boundaries and cutting ties resonated with audiences everywhere. Claire and Quentin's downfall, bankruptcy, isolation, and the collapse of their marriage became proof of the cost of betrayal. To anyone listening now, the lesson is simple but powerful. Boundaries matter. Even with family, you do not owe anyone tolerance for lies, manipulation, or abuse. Protecting your own life isn't revenge. It's survival. Building your future, independent and whole, is the greatest oeni of all. So if you found strength in my journey, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more stories and insights.